Well, good afternoon, folks. My name is David Collinsworth. I'm the General Manager, CEO of the Brazos River Authority, and I'd like to welcome you to another Brown Bag on the Brazos. This is a meeting series that we've been hosting for a little over a year now. It's the week following our board meeting, and it provides, we think, a wonderful opportunity for us to download and share some information, not only from our board meeting, but other things that are going on across the basin that might be of interest to you. We've got a good agenda for you today. Like always, we're going to stick really simply to a 1-hour timeline so you can get back to lunch. But again, really appreciate you tuning in and joining us. Jude, you can go to the next slide. So here's what our agenda looks like. Our Water Services Manager, Aaron Abel, is going to talk with you a little bit about the drought conditions that we're in and our water supply. And then our Lake Granbury Reservoir Manager, Connie Tucker, is going to talk with you a little bit about living on the lake and what it looks like when we have to deal with some of these drought-like conditions. So then we'll take questions and answers. You can go on to the next slide, Judy. And here's how we do questions and answers on our brown bag. So ask questions anytime. To ask a question, you click on the question bubble in the right upper hand corner of your screen, and it allows you to ask the question. And then toward the end of the meeting, we'll take as many questions as we can. The questions that we receive that we don't have time to answer, we'll post answers to on our webpage. And then if you're not comfortable through this format, if you want to send us questions to information@brazos.org, that's another way for us to address any of the questions that you have. So, okay, Judy, next. So our board meets every other month. Our next board meeting will be on September the 26th. We just had a board meeting 2 weeks ago. We had some very significant budget agenda items that we presented to our board. One of those was a Tainer Gate project that we're working on at Lake Limestone. We're actually moving ahead of schedule and having some of those gates fabricated. So we went in for a budget amendment to allow us to spend some of the money that we had budgeted for next fiscal year actually to be spent in this fiscal year. So that was a real positive step forward with that project. And hopefully we'll be installing a new gate sometime early in the maybe springtime of 2023. Also, our board approved a new contract for our wastewater operations contract with the city of Richwood and Clute. For those of you that may not know, the Brazos River Authority does operate wastewater treatment plants around our basin under contract operations. We actually don't own any wastewater treatment plants, but we've been in the operation business for a very long time, since the early 70s, actually. And then we had a kind of a budget workshop with our board where we walked them through for the second time our proposed FY23 budget. Our fiscal year starts on September the 1st. And they adopted our budget, and that included a 5% increase in our raw water rates from $83 an acre foot to $88 an acre foot. And you can go on our webpage at brazos.org and look at the budget. And actually, you can go on brazos.org and go agenda item to agenda item and actually watch the meeting as it was recorded back in July. So feel free to do that and learn more about what our board adopted and approved. Last but not least, our board adopted our proposed FY23 strategic plan. And if you want to learn more about the Brazos River Authority and kind of what we focus on and what we're trying to achieve in the future, that strategic plan document is a good way to really get in tune with what we're focused on. So with that was kind of the priorities of the board meeting. Again, you can go on brazos.org to watch the board meeting if you're interested in doing that. And Judy, next slide, please. So I think that's it for me. Aaron, I'm going to, at this time, turn the program over to Aaron Abel and let him get into the discussions of the drought and our water supply and lake levels. Make it rain, Aaron.
Pulling up my slides now. Hopefully you can see those. So,
yes, we can.
Okay, good deal. Well, glad everybody could join us again this afternoon. And as David mentioned, on everybody's mind is the drought and the summer heat and conditions we're experiencing. But today we'll walk you through several items. One of the things that we wanted to do is compare the current status of the Bay Area water supply system to where we were during the significant 2011 drought that a lot of folks will remember. We'll talk a little bit about how the system is functioning and some of the decisions that we have to make in providing water throughout the system and throughout the basin. So we'll touch on those aspects, and then finally we'll round out the segment talking about what to expect over the next couple of months, and briefly talking about maybe the longer term forecast. I know that's everybody's wanting to know when is it going to rain, and it will rain. It's just a matter of when that will occur. So this next slide, I wanted to talk about, what we're seeing as far as how hot and dry it is. And we're in the heart of a very hot and dry summer, which is, not abnormal for Texas. We have these. But I know a lot of folks are wondering how this summer has stacked up against other Texas summers in the past. And this is an excellent chart from the Texas State climatologist, John Nielsen Gammon, that does just that. It compares what we're seeing here up to about mid-July to other summers. And it plots the average summer June, July, and August temperatures against the cumulative precipitation across the entire state. So we're not talking just about the Brazos, but the entire state. And the labels appear in each year from 2000 to 2022, along with some few notable earlier years. For example, 1976 was one of the cooler summers. So the higher you plot on the vertical axis, the hotter it is. You'll see 2011 up in the upper left corner, and then 2022 so far is in the purple box. And so this is up through about mid-July. So there's definitely some summer left, through the rest of the August to complete what will be recorded as 2022 as far as how hot it is. And then on the x-axis or the horizontal axis is how wet it is. So anything plotting closer to zero obviously is drier, and anything plotting over to the right, you'll see 2007 and 2017 is some of the wetter summers. So notably, obviously, the hottest summer is 2011, and the driest summer is also 2011. And we've had, wetter summers like 2007, which have all occurred in the past 15 years. Additionally, we'll see some, top three wettest summers like 2004, 2007, and 2017 have all occurred within the last 20 years. So suffice to say, 2022 is going to be hot. It already has been hot, and it's likely to continue to be dry, and so it's going to stack up to be a very hot and dry summer compared to other summers. Changing gears slightly, we wanted to show you how the current drought period stacked up to the 2010 through 2011 period in terms of departure from normal rainfall. So these two maps, they compare the departure from normal rainfall that occurred from October through July of both the 2010 through 2011 period, and then also the 2021 through 2022 period. In 2011, the lower portion of the basin was very dry and much drier than it is now, with departure from normal rainfall amounts of up to 20 inches that would have normally occurred. So very dry conditions below normal in 2011. And then when you contrast it, that year to what we're seeing over the last 9 months, we're seeing, definitely had more rainfall below the reservoirs in the lower basin, but we're still seeing dry conditions, anywhere from 6 to 16 inches below normal over the last 9 months. You'll also see that the central part of the basin was a little bit drier this year than in 2011, and that kind of speaks to how little water is flowing into the reservoirs, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And the upper basin was quite a bit drier in 2011. We've seen, more rainfall, in the upper portion of the basin than what we did in the 2010 to 2011 period. One of the things to note is, because we did receive more rainfall below the reservoirs, in this drought than the last drought, it really kept more water flowing in the main stem of the river longer than it did in 2011. And we'll talk a little bit about downstream water supply releases, but we didn't have to initiate downstream water supply releases until early June of this year, whereas in 2011, we were initiating releases for our lower basin customers, which include Dow, Chemical, Gulf Coast Water Authority, and NRG as early as the first couple of weeks in April. So, that's one, kind of big difference between what we saw 11 years ago and today. So we talked a bit about the lack of rainfall over the last 9 months. So how has that impacted the amount of water entering the reservoirs? And so what we determine, or what we estimate as far as inflows, when we talk about inflows, we talk about the amount of water flowing into the reservoirs, so into all 11 reservoirs in the system. And it's measured from a water balance perspective. And in other words, we know the change in storage. We know, over a course of a month, we know how much is released, how much is used. We estimate evaporative losses, and we can calculate inflows. And that's what you're seeing on this chart here. So the vertical axis is in acre feet, and it's basically the monthly inflows over all 11 reservoirs from October through June, through the end of June, throughout the system. And we picked several different sequences to look at. And one is the blue bars is the average inflows over these periods, over these months from 1994 through 2021. The green bars for each month represents inflows averaged over the 2011 through 2015 period, and that's what we consider, our most recent significant drought in the Brazos River Basin, and in some parts of the basin, it was the worst drought on record, particularly in the upper basin. We also picked out a couple of years, most notably the 2010 through 2011 period, the 2012 through 2013 period, and then in the red is what we've been seeing over the last, essentially 9 months, from October of 2021 through the end of June of 2022. And so what you'll see is in 2022, the combined inflows from January through June are similar to those of 2011 and 2013. As expected, we didn't receive much rain, and especially upstream of the reservoirs, when we didn't see the inflows and the water entering the reservoirs. Through June 30th of this year, the system has experienced about 330,000 acre feet of inflows. For context, our current storage in all 11 reservoirs is about 1.54 million acre feet. So still have a lot of water stored in the reservoirs, but it's safe to say that this year so far has been extremely dry, and that is evident how little water has entered the system due to the lack of rain. And most of the months, particularly in January and in May, 2021 to 2022, those months were below the 2010 through 2011 months and the 2012 and 2013 months. So, but in other months we were a little bit higher, but more or less we're about on par with those critically dry periods in the critical drought 11 years ago. This is another graphic that compares the current drought with 2011, and we wanted to compare the reservoir storage at the end of July in 2011 versus what we're seeing at the end of July of 2022. So you'll see the legend here. So the storage difference. Any reservoirs that are in the orange color have storage that in 2022 that's less than what it was in 2011, and the greener and the blue dots for each reservoir that represents higher storage in 2022 versus 2011, and you'll see the depiction of of all the reservoir names and whatnot. So on this map, so the overall message here is, water supply system is faring overall better than it did in this time in 2011. The only two reservoirs within the system that are slightly worse now than in 2011 is Lakes Belton and Aquila. Belton is just under 2% lower on July 20th, 2022 compared to that same time in 2011. That equates to around 6,000 acre feet less water now than it was in 2011. Just for comparison, right now, Lake Belton is storing over 340,000 acre feet of water. So more or less, we're about where we were in 2011 at Belton. The other reservoir that's storing slightly less water now than in 2011 is Lake Aquila, located in the Central Basin in Hill County. And as of July 20th, 2022, Lake Aquila was around 7% lower than what it was at the same time in 2011. The water level at Lake Aquila is around a foot lower than it was at the same time back in July 2011, and it's storing about 2,500 acre feet less water. So overall, right now, Aquila is storing over 30,000 acre feet of water. But you'll see in the other reservoirs in the system are faring better, and in some instances, much better than what we were in 2011. So from the total system storage standpoint, one of the questions is, well, how does this compare to 2011? And what you're seeing in this plot is the percent full of the total system. So the amount of water stored in all 11 reservoirs relative to the full capacity. So 100% full is all the reservoirs filled to the top of conservation, to the top of the water supply storage in all the reservoirs. And so we have two sequences here. One is from 2021 to 2022, spanning from March of 2021 on to basically the early August of 2022, and that's in the orange line. And the blue line is what we experienced from March 2010 through the end of 2011 in December of 2011. So one of the things I want to point out is you'll notice that last summer and last May, we had a significant amount of rain that filled the reservoirs, and we continued to stay full throughout most of the summer in the Brazos River Basin for the 11 reservoirs. And we did start to experience that lack of rainfall kind of in the August to September period, and you can see that in the plot and as it declined. Whereas if you look in the 2010 to 2011 period, we entered that drought, around 5 to 7% lower than where we were, in this drought period. The other thing that I mentioned before is the initiation of downstream water supply releases. We started releasing water for our downstream customers in April, and the blue line, starts to decline pretty rapidly in April. Whereas in this last period and earlier this year in 2022, those downstream flows below the reservoir system satisfied a lot of the senior water right holders and our customers, and they were allowed to divert water and satisfy their needs for a longer period of time. But it was until early June where we had to start releasing the water to satisfy those needs in the lower basin. So this is another. We show the drought monitor and the reservoir status on each of these brown bag water supply updates, and I wanted to show, I think our last brown bag was in early June, and compare the drought monitor and the reservoir status to what we are today on August 4th. And just to let everybody know, these graphics are on our website. You can go to brazos.org under About Us, Water Supply and Drought, and find the updated graphics as far as these drought monitors and a number of other information that would be useful. So on June 9th, the total system storage was about 92% full, and we had about 1.78 million acre feet stored across the 11 reservoirs. And as of yesterday, the total system storage was around 80% full, storing about 1.54 million acre feet in the system. And so we've had about a 12% decline. It's about 234,000 acre feet. But that's not uncommon. We've seen that in the past, and due to the lack of rain and hot temperatures, our water use and evaporative rates are increasing, and you'll see that in the represented in the drought monitor. We've had an expansion of exceptional drought conditions, primarily in the central and parts of the upper basin. We've had expansion of exceptional drought conditions in the lower part of the basin through Austin and Washington counties and into Waller County. So we've seen expansion of drought, and that's not it's not surprising due to the hot temperatures and lack of rain. So as of yesterday, August 3rd, as I mentioned, the total system is 80% full, and we're storing about 1.54 million acre feet. All the reservoirs within the BRA water supply system are in stage 1 drought watch associated with our drought contingency plan, with the exception of Lake Proctor, which entered stage 2 drought warning earlier this week. For stage 1 drought watch, we're requesting a 5% reduction in water use that would have occurred, in the absence of drought conditions. For Lake Proctor, which has just entered stage 2, we're requesting 10% reduction in water use. So Lake Proctor has dropped to 6 feet below full, and it's a 57% full right now. And that's not uncommon for Lake Proctor. It is a small reservoir located in the upper part of the basin, and it has a pretty small watershed as well. So we'll talk about what to expect in the next slide. But as mentioned previously, we began downstream water supply releases for our lower basin customers, which include NRG, Gulf Coast Water Authority, and Dow Chemical on June 6th. And through the end of July, we've released approximately 64,000 acre feet of water combined from Lakes Whitney, Somerville, and Limestone. Through the end of July in 2011, downstream water supply releases totaled in excess of 126,000 acre feet. So we're about, from a downstream water supply volume released, we're about half as what we saw in 2011. Now, one of the questions we receive is, how do you make decisions for downstream water supply? We have to consider a number of different factors, including the overall size of a reservoir providing the release, local demands on the reservoir. So we have customers that divert lakeside at the reservoirs, and that has to be considered in determining if we can release water downstream, because we have state water rights that are constrained about concerning the amount of water we can use on an annual basis. And the other thing is some reservoirs are typically wetter than others. Reservoirs down closer to the Gulf Coast, Somerville, and in East Texas, eastern part of the Texas, eastern part of our basin, Lake Limestone, are typically wetter. And the other thing that we have to consider is the amount of water lost during the transport of water from a reservoir downstream to diversion locations. Reservoirs located in the uppermost part of the basin are typically used later in drought, since those reservoirs are located in regions that typically receive less rain and have lower watershed drainage area, and they're less likely to fill than reservoirs located further downstream. Additionally, releases from those reservoirs in the upper part of the basin take longer to travel downstream and exhibit higher loss rates. Looking ahead, we will be stopping the current downstream release from Lake Limestone for our lower basin customers probably later next week. And once that occurs, we'll be utilizing a combination of Lake Somerville and Belton throughout the remainder of August to provide downstream water supply releases for our lower basin users. If the drought continues and we enter into September and October, we'll have to potentially move to other reservoirs throughout the system to provide those downstream releases. Looking at reservoir projections through the end of September and using minimum inflows and high evaporation, the total system storage could drop from around 80% where we are today down to about 66% by the end of September. I want to stress that these are very high projected demands and minimum inflows and high evaporation. So I hope this doesn't validate, but it's something that could happen if we have continued drought conditions. We will likely enter stage 1 drought watch for the entire BRA water supply system over the next week. And so the combined storage trigger for stage 1 drought watch for the system is 1.524 million acre feet. And today we're around 1.544 million acre feet. It's a difference about 20,500 acre feet. And so we'll likely hit that in the next several days to a week and enter that drought stage. That's really not going to change as far as what we're asking our customers, but it does indicate that as a system in a whole, we are starting to experience, I guess, more expansive impacts to the drought, from a system-wide standpoint. We anticipate Lake Aquila reaching its stage 2 drought warning trigger of elevation 530.5 in late September, and that's considering minimum inflows and high evaporation over the next 6 weeks or so. Additionally, it is possible that Lake Proctor may reach its stage 3 drought emergency trigger by the end of September, possibly by mid-September. And stage 3 drought emergency requires at least a total reduction of water use of 20%. And if circumstances warrant that reduction goal could be increased above that amount, depending on inflows and other hydrologic parameters. Stage 3 drought emergency also requires BRA customers to cease diversion and use of water under interruptible water availability agreements. So that is another requirement under stage 3 drought emergency. So looking ahead, we pay close attention to the El Nino and La Nina events. And, we've talked about this in previous brown bags, but the sea surface temperatures off the coast of South America along the equator really impact our weather and when we get rain, in the southern tier of the U.S. So right now we are in La Nina conditions, and that basically means there's below normal sea surface temperatures, and that typically causes the jet stream and storm systems to move further north of the southern tier of the U.S. And you're seeing flooding in Kentucky and West Virginia, and that's because they're having those storm systems that are a little bit further north of us. La Nina conditions are expected to persist through the remainder of the year and possibly into winter of next year. So this probability bar graph, I know this is a little bit complicated, but the blue bars indicate higher probability of La Nina forecasted in each of these 3-month periods, going all the way to next year, the March, April, May period. You'll notice that in the January through March period, we see a transition of La Nina forecasted to a more neutral condition. And we can still have rain, and we will still have rain in La Nina conditions, but it's likely that if we are still in La Nina, we'll see below normal rain. If we transition to neutral conditions, that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get a lot of rain, but there's the potential is there because hopefully the storm track will kind of move further southward, and we can get some of those rains, in the early part of next year. It's likely, through the end of the fall and towards the end of this year that La Nina stays in that condition, and we may not see the high rainfall amounts that we typically see in October. October is our second rainiest month in the Brazos and in most of Texas, and that's when we have fronts come through and we have interactions of and storms pop up, and so we may not see that, but we will see rain in the fall. That's one thing that we will see. The days are getting shorter. Evaporation rates will start to go down later this month and into September, and water use will start to go down, and it will get cooler. That's one thing that we do know will happen. Seasonal outlooks from the National Oceanic Administration combine effects of long-term trends, soil moisture, and when appropriate, the El Nino and La Nina conditions. And so this is something that we've typically done in the brown brags, but this is a 3-month outlook through the end of October. And The upper left, you'll see the precipitation outlook through the end of October. One thing that you'll note is, most of the Brazos Basin is forecast to be not in the brown. And what that means is they really don't know. Equal chances of rain of either below or above rain. So we really don't know what's going to happen over the next 3 months as far as rainfall heading into the fall. Temperature outlook continues to be above normal through the end of October. And then the U.S. drought outlook continues to show drought persisting. So, even though we get, we may get some rain and hopefully it'll be beneficial to wet the soils and increase inflows in the reservoir. But at this point, they're projecting that, we won't see enough to break us out of the drought. And as everybody knows, droughts in Texas are broken by floods. And that will happen. We will have floods again. We will have rain again, and the reservoirs will be full again. And the matter is when that will occur. One of the things to think about right now, and everybody's, as we enter the height of the Atlantic hurricane season, that season starts June 1st and expands, goes through the end of October, I believe. Right now, we haven't really seen any tropical cyclone activity hardly at all this year. We are approaching that peak development season. And I saw somewhere that somebody mentioned on social media that 90 to 95% of the storms occur after August 1st in the Atlantic Basin. So there's a lot of things can happen in the tropical cyclone development, and the potential for tropical rain that would help us in the drought situation. But right now, what's interesting is we have Saharan air and dust that is moving across the Atlantic, and it's been doing that for the last several months, and it creates unique properties, and it creates warm air, dry air, and strong winds, and that really doesn't allow for tropical cyclone development. So at least in the next several weeks, there's no anticipation of any tropical cyclones and rain from that development. But that's something to definitely watch as we move over the next month or so. And I think with that, I just wanted to close that. We hope we answered some questions concerning our operations as we move closer to the end of summer. And it is going to get cooler again. It's going to rain again. The fall is just around the corner. So I think that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. A few things to take from Aaron's presentation. One is, if you own a black Ford pickup truck, there's no really reason to try to keep it clean for the next few weeks. Also, the other thing I want you to take from Aaron's presentation is that the Brazos River Authority has a team of hydrologists and scientists that their entire career is dedicated every day to looking at lake levels and water flows and water management. So we are doing absolutely everything that we can to make sure that the water supply lasts as long as it does. I think you also saw that our water supply going into the fall and the winter is in excellent shape. And we are primed and ready to try to manage our way through a significant drought should this continue for an extended period of time. So the other thing is go to brazos.org, and Aaron and his team are giving bi-weekly updates on the drought and our water supply releases and strategies on how we're making our water management more efficient. So tune into that, and it's posted on our web, and you can go at any time and watch those. So our next presenter is Connie Tucker. Connie is our lake manager up at Lake Granbury. She does an outstanding job in managing the reservoir and managing our relationships with our customers and neighboring cities. So Connie, tell them a little bit about what it's like to manage a lake and some of the issues that we deal with around the lake during these times.
Thank you, David. I'm happy to be here, and I hope I can provide a little bit more information for lakeside owners. Even though we're in drought conditions, we're hoping they don't last near as long as last time, but we've already had some impacts around the lake, so I wanted to share my presentation. So hang on one second. And here we go. So Aaron talked a little bit about the last drought and how it had the lowest number of, or the highest number of days with no rain. This was the Brazos River at Seymour in 2014. I've heard again, it's down to about 0 CFS. So while we're hopeful that we can get out of this quicker, we need rain. So the drought in Granbury, at our lowest point, we were 11.25 foot low below our normal pool of 692, 50, 70 in that range. This was our lake then. That's one of our busier marinas. And I don't know if you can see, but their gas dock is almost completely out of the water and their marina is completely out of the water. Lake Limestone had similar effects. They were about 11 feet below their normal pool. That's one of their boat ramps. That's one of their parks, Park 3, and this is Park 5. Possum Kingdom was down 15.5 feet at their worst. These are lakeshore homes, and you can see their docks are not near the water. That's Sandy Beach, and that whole structure is out of the water. And that's another one of their marinas. So the effects of droughts are significant, as you can see, on boat ramps especially. Some go out of service before others, but each lake has done as much as it can to extend their piers and docks and ramps to be in deeper water, but there's only so much you can do when you have a very shallow area. Possum Kingdom has 7 ramps, 4 of which can stay open once the lake reaches 990 mark. Lake Limestone has already closed one of its 4 ramps, but the others can remain open till about 358 elevation, and Lake Granbury's 4 ramps are still open, but we're getting close on a couple of them that we'll have to close. Only one can remain open once we hit 680, 650. Remember that these levels are from the last drought. We've had several floods since then, and those bring in more silt, so they could change. We just monitor them daily and make sure that they're still safe for launching. Fishing piers and boat docks can also get high and dry. So you can see that extended drought results in on-water facilities becoming unusable. Depending on your location on your lake, that could vary time-wise when that happens. It could be when we're only a foot or 2 low and you're already in trouble. It could be 4 to 5 feet low and you can still get out. But if you're in a more shallow area of the lake, you want to really keep your eye on these levels and get your boat out as the waters go down before it's too late. Basically, if you're wondering if it's time, it's probably time. And take it out and get it on your trailer. It's better to be too early than too late. It's also boats stored in marinas. You want to keep your eye on that as well as some other, if you have other private property stored on the lake, keep your eye on that and get it out. Some boat lifts have cables that you can adjust to lower water levels. This can prolong the length of time you can keep your boat in the slip, but sometimes even lengthening it isn't enough when you don't have any water under your dock. Some floating docks have anchor cables that you need to tighten as your water level goes down. So be sure to keep your eye on those levels. But be careful, because if we have a large rainstorm and the lake comes up quite suddenly, you might have your dock submerged. It's also a great time to perform maintenance on and around your dock. Inspect your poles, your decking, replace loose boards, paint, clear vegetation below your dock. But be sure to call your lake office to check and make sure what you want to do is allowed and what permit you would need in order to do that. Another thing that has an effect on the drought effects, is lakeside water pumps. As you can see, they go down quickly too. We don't let people chase the lake to get the water. In most cases, the water is going to be too far away. And if everybody extends their lines, once the water comes back, you're going to have navigational hazards for boaters. Be sure to check your pumps and turn them off before your lakefront goes dry. If levels are sufficient to perform repair work from the water, this would be an excellent time to repair your retaining walls and check them. As you can see, once the water goes down, there are defects that may show up. And again, be sure to check with your lake office and get your proper permit before you start any repair work on the water. Canals usually feel the effects of drought first, of course, depending on their depth. However, retaining walls, repairs, vegetation removal, this is a great time for that. But check with your HOA, because a lot of times the HOA is responsible for the canals. And also, again, check with the BRA to make sure you have your proper permits before you do any work. So as lake levels decline, underwater hazards become exposed. And in the last drought, we found so many different things we had no idea were out there on Granbury. We found old bridge supports, stump fields that we didn't even know were there, previously uncovered sections of concrete, and other just miscellaneous pieces of metal and concrete. We even found the front porch of a house that used to be in the lake, well, where the lake was. So be really careful, not only boating, but if you want to be jumping into the lake, you don't know what's under that water, especially as it goes down. And as the effects of the drought persist, the lakes can recede back towards the river channel. You can see right in here, that's the river. This used to be the lake right in here. So the river upstream of the lake as well as downstream can show significant impacts. Sorry. This is I-20 bridge at the last drought when the lake was barely getting through. So we've talked about what you can do. What can't you do if we have an extended drought? So no matter how dry the lake bed may appear and how easy it looks to drive your vehicle out on those sandbars, don't do it. If you do it, you can get your vehicle majorly stuck. You can have a lot of repairs needed on that vehicle, and you will have a hefty tow bill to get that thing out of our lake. They have to call in the heavy duty wreckers to get these out. So please don't do that. And as tempting as it may be to cut off the tops of stumps as they appear, you could be creating another hazard as the lake continues to drop. We did not know that these stumps were here, and you can see how evenly they are cut, probably by boat propellers and things. However, if people just cut down a foot under that where the water level used to be, again, you're just creating more hazards as the lake goes down. If there is a stump in the navigational channel, then contact our office and we can go assess it. And if it is a true navigational hazard, we can get that removed. BRA adopted new regulations that protect the BRA property and natural and cultural resources. These prohibit excavating or removing timber, vegetation, rock, sand, gravel, or any other substance or material, or any archaeological, historic, or geologic feature from BRA lakes and lands. So if you happen to be looking for things and you uncover something that looks like it might be an artifact, please note the location and get in touch with your local BRA office so we can report it. The regulations also prohibit locating or constructing improvements or structures on BRA lakes or lands like fencing. It's very tempting while the lake levels are low to build a fence across the lake bed to keep people out with boats or animals. That's not allowed. Again, once the levels come back up, you have a navigational hazard. And no burning in the lake bed. although there is subflow underneath it, which is why the vehicles get stuck, there's also very dry vegetation on top. And this creates another ecological hazard. Plus, we need the vegetation to stay for the fish habitat once the water comes back. So how does a drought usually end? And Aaron stole my line, with a flood. And fortunately, we go from one extreme to another, but hopefully we'll see significant rainfall sooner rather than later. And in the meantime, if you have questions, you can always call your local lake office and they'll be happy to help you answer any question you have. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Connie. Okay, so let's sticking with the conversation about lake levels. Those of you that have tuned into BRA board meetings or to other brown bags that we've had, you've heard us talk about maintenance projects on our reservoirs. And one of the rumors that we always hear is that BRA is planning to lower our reservoir levels so that we can do maintenance on our dams. And those are just absolutely false. We have no plans on any of the projects that we have on the books to lower our reservoirs, jeopardize our water supply, so that we can do work on our dams, Possum Kingdom, Granbury, Limestone, all three included. So if you're hearing that the BRA is lowering the lake because of issues at the dams, that is false. The reason that the lake levels are declining is just because what Aaron showed you, the lack of rainfall, continued evaporation, high evaporation, and continued water use. And that's, quite candidly, that's the purpose of these reservoirs, is for future water supply and to help us get through times of drought. So again, we are not planning to lower any of our reservoirs for future maintenance projects on our dam. So another question that we received, and I'm going to turn this over to you, Connie, if you're still out there, is can you use metal detectors in the lake bed when the lake is low, and is that an issue? So can you address that, please?
My camera stopped working, sorry. Yes, you can, but again, if there's things that you find that may be an artifact, no, you cannot. I mean, you can't take that out of the lake bed. It needs to stay.
Tiffany or Connie, either one of you, talk about what would be some form of an artifact, to clarify that.
An artifact would be any sort of fossil, ancient material, things like arrowheads, any sort of historical artifact that technically is the property of the state of Texas. So, like Connie said, if that front porch had been old enough from a house from the 1800s, that could have been a cultural artifact. So, just basically historical items of educational value.
Okay, very good. So another question that we've recently received is about the upcoming duck hunting waterfowl permit drawings that we're fixing to have, and I've got those dates. If you're interested in writing those down, we'll have our first waterfowl hunt blind drawing at Possum Kingdom Lake at 8 a.m. on August the 20th. That's at our Possum Kingdom office. We'll hold a similar drawing at Lake Granbury at 8 a.m. on August the 26th at our Lake Granbury office. And then last but not least, at Lake Limestone at 8:30 a.m. on August the 26th at the Lake Limestone office also. So another question that we received, we still have a little bit more time for questions and answers. And I'm going to turn this over to you, Aaron. And one of the questions that we received is relating to the water supply in Lake Waco, and why isn't the Lake Waco water supply part of the BRA system? Good question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, Lake Waco it's a major reservoir, and BRA was the state sponsor for Lake Waco, and we worked with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to build the reservoir. But the permit, the state water right for the water that's stored in Lake Waco belongs solely to the city of Waco. It's not part of our system, and all the use is essentially local. In here in McLennan County.
Okay, very good. That is all of the questions that we've received. Again, I want to thank everybody. Let me turn my camera on there. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Remind you for the drought updates, go to our webpage at brazos.org. Again, if you have any questions, either from today's material or material that you see on our webpage or rumors that you hear, feel free to send those to information at brazos.org, and we'll do all we can to help you get answers to those. So again, thank you for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon and stay cool. Thank you.